how we raised community shares to save or start our business. I'm going to hand over to Suzanne, who's chairing this one. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kelly. Welcome, everybody, to the festival and to this fabulous building. It's a pleasure to be here. Just loving this room, loving the light that's flooding in. Wondered, as soon as I entered, I wondered what the predecessors or the family that lived here would have thought about the new economy. So let's show them, let's tell them. Here on this fabulous panel today, and we've got Jennifer Bird from Signalise, we've got Matt Otridge from the Music Venue Trust, and we've got Emma Moore from the Zion Bristol, which is a cafe and art space. Matt's outfit is a charity that was set up to protect, secure and improve the grassroots music venue sector across the UK, and Jen, Signalise, are providers of sign language interpreters. So we're going to try and crack open your community shares journeys. Nobody knows them like you. You've done them for different reasons at different stages of the journey. I found out loads about various different community shares journeys, and the options with community shares just seem endless. So I'm not going to jump straight into the questions. I'm going to hand over to you and just let you take 2 minutes just to, put a little bit of colour around who you are, what you do, so we can start to get a feel for the different sectors that you're representing and the different organisations, a feel for what you do. So, Jen, okay if I start with you?
Yeah. Morning, everyone. So, I'm Jen Bird from Signalise. Signalise is a multi-stakeholder cooperative. We're creating tech to bring together deaf users and sign language interpreters. So technically we're a platform co-op, although nobody really knows what a platform co-op is. We have 13 NHS contracts now, mainly because we did a community share offer. And we're 3 years down the line from that offer. So our turnover has gone in quite a steep trajectory. And we're still alive and doing what we do.
Fabulous, thank you, Matt.
Hi, I'm Matt. I wear many hats, one of which is working for Music Venue Trust. As Suzanne said, it's a charity that acts to protect, secure and improve grassroots music venues up and down the country. We have about 830 members in total, so 830 music venues. I'm also the COO for Music Venue Properties, which is actually a charitable community benefit society that was set up by Music Venue Trust to basically purchase the freeholds of grassroots music venues to rent them back to the community operators where they were unable to sort of take the same action themselves, essentially. So essentially looking to replace a commercial landlord with a community charity landlord, essentially. And my history is, before that, was running music venues, most notably Exchange in Old Market here in Bristol, which also undertook a share offer back in the past. I'll touch on that in a minute.
Magic, thank you. Emma.
Hi, my name's Emma. I'm the centre manager and oversaw the community share offer for a community space in Bedminster Down. Nobody knows where Bedminster Down is. So if you look out the window, there's a big hill with some houses on it, and that's Bedminster Down. The property was put up for sale. It was privately owned as a community space. And they decided during COVID that they wanted to move on and do something else and gave us a first shout for buying the property. So we launched a community share offer back in April 2022. So we managed to purchase the property. That all went through 2023. Yeah, 2023. So we've been running the property ever since.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so we're going to go into your journeys. It's obviously not the easiest way to raise finance, quite an intense and involved process, isn't it? So do you want to tell us a little bit about the journey so far, the why you led towards that particular way of raising finance, how it's gone, pitfalls, what went well, some of the barriers, would you do it again? Jen, I'll start with you again.
So we started trading, and in our first year, we were quite lucky because it was the pandemic. So for sign language interpreting, a lot of events went online. So we said, we can do that. And we did. But we were looking for our NHS work as well, because that's where social impact is really high. And like Matt, we were looking to replace some of those larger spoken language agencies, cutting out the middleman, essentially, and becoming us as the experts, as providers, to provide those interpreters to the NHS. So we did that, but we couldn't really do that without building up our infrastructure and building up the technology, and that's where the community share raise came in. So we raised 328,000, or just over, and basically that was a massive springboard to take us from doing sort of single, as we like to call it, ad hoc bookings. So one event here, like our lovely interpreters over here, big shout out to them, who's interpreting for Olive from Signalise today. So taking us from doing single events to having public sector contracts, which is a massive leap. So we had to basically get contract ready, which is what the community share raise had done for us. Very different to crowdfunding, much more involved. I still don't understand community shares 100%, I would say. I find it incredibly complicated, but also incredibly rewarding. And to have 200 plus people in the community backing your idea is incredibly rewarding.
And what is it that you find complicated about it? What are the areas that you...
I think the idea of taking money from the community, paying interest, engaging with the investors, just some of the language around it, the technicalities and the legalities around it can be really confusing. I think unless you've got somebody to hold your hand through it, there's not a chance that you would, well, perhaps it's just me, but my brain couldn't comprehend some of that stuff without somebody around to support us.
Yeah. Matt, over to you.
Okay, with apologies in advance because this is a long story. So 2007, I used to run the Croft grassroots music venue in Bristol. That was rented. We could see the writing on the wall as we were going along because the area was starting to gentrify. It was clear the landlord was going to charge us more money. At this point, we managed to buy the Exchange in Old Market, which was in an area that nobody really wanted to have anything to do in. Now, everybody who knows Bristol will know that that area is also gentrified, but thankfully we bought the building. So the point of buying that building was because that would secure our long-term future. We could see ownership was an issue there. But then we identified another problem, which was essentially around succession planning and the fact that our business only really existed because we really cared about it, the fact that we would work long hours for less money than anybody would. And we wanted it to remain there. We didn't want it to disappear when we didn't want to do it anymore. And we felt like the community would feel that way as well. So that's what brought us to the community share offer. It wasn't so much it was a saving, and we articulated it as saving, but it was more kind of strategic long-term future planning, which wouldn't have looked so good on a banner as Save Exchange was. So we raised £300,000 through community shares. We raised, it was about 400 people put money in. That allowed us to just restructure, allowed us to kind of make improvements that then allowed the business to be a bit more successful, and therefore be able to pay the people who run it, which then in the end didn't actually end up being us, which so it wasn't a thing for our own gains. And it also did create a platform where the new people who might come and run the venue in the future could be found from. So fast forward on a couple of years, the Exchange closes with all the other music venues because of the pandemic starts. I joined Music Venue Trust at that point. Music Venue Trust had started 6 years prior to that, 2014, and its principal goal was to actually start owning the freeholds of these grassroots music venues, because, again, they had sort of come to the same conclusions that we had, that the commercial ownership of these spaces was the biggest threat. I took my experience, after a couple of months of sort of settling in and trying to firefight all of the things that were going on with COVID around the time, I said, well, could we take the Exchange's experience and apply it over kind of a national, national picture? So essentially, could we raise money to buy the freeholds of venues around the countries and, keep in place the operators who were running it? Because I knew from my experience with the Exchange that it was possible, and it felt like it was possible because I put everything into it, and it was unrealistic to think that everybody else could do that. But also because we were in Bristol, I felt like there's certain pockets of the country where politically the idea of community share sits well, and probably as importantly the makeup of that city is a bit more affluent, perhaps. So some of the venues that we bought now with Music Venue Properties are in areas of high deprivation where they just wouldn't have been able to raise that kind of capital themselves. So a couple of years later, this is the abridged version, we raised 2.5 million, which was a mix of community shares, which was about £1 million, grants from Arts Council, loans from the Arts and Culture Impact Fund. We had some buy-in from some local councils, Preston Council most notably, and we've started now the process of actually purchasing the freeholds, which I thought at first would be the easy bit, but actually it turns out it's just as hard as raising all the money to start off with, because they're fraught with issues. But we're getting there, and we've bought two so far: the Snug in Atherton and the Ferret in Preston, both in the northwest. And we've got 3 under offer at the moment. We're hoping to complete on by the end of the summer. So I think that probably covers it all. I did that as quick as I could.
Right, I've got to try and remember. It was all quite a traumatic experience, actually, the whole community shares. So we were offered first dibs on the hall. So it is an old primitive Methodist church with some accommodation at the back, which was converted. So there's office spaces as well. We thought that community shares would be the most realistic way of raising the money, but we weren't sure because of our location. Anyone who knows Bristol, it's like BS13 is not seen as the most affluent of areas. But we did we held a meeting to see how many local residents would be interested in trying to help save the venue. And 130 people turned up, and that was in 2021. So it was just after all the COVID stuff had happened. We're all very nervous because there's so many people in one hall at the same time. We asked people quite cheekily how much they would be willing to invest to save the property. So that gave us a good indication about what we had to aim for. And we were looking at the time 50% community shares and then 50% either the community ownership fund, or we got lined up a mortgage for a business mortgage for the other 50%. So yeah, we launched the community share offer, and it was really slow. And it was difficult to get grants in place because people couldn't see the buy-in because the community shares were so low at the time. It is a roller coaster. I phoned Matt a couple of times to say, oh my gosh, is this normal? And he said, yeah, it's going to happen, don't worry. So we were really lucky. We got some grants from people just at the right time, which pushed up the amount so people could see that it was possible. I think we had one late grant of 20 grand, which took us just underneath what we needed for the total. And then we had a flurry that weekend and hit our total. So that was incredible. We've got 381 shareholders, and 243 are from the BS13 area, so you can sort of understand the buy-in that we've got from the local community. We were also supported by Co-ops UK with their Community Share Booster Fund, which was essential, and also local organisations like Artspace Livespace, which supported this actual event. So that's really good, getting support from other organisations in Bristol to make it happen. It was a bit of a precarious time because it was the start of the year, the April, when we got a commercial sort of mortgage, and we were quoted 2.2% interest rate. And then within a 6-7 month period, it went up to 7.9%. We had to either renew the mortgage, because anyone who knows about the Community Ownership Fund, the second round, the can got kicked down the road for months and months. So we thought we would find out at the end of August, and we didn't get the call till the 12th of December. So we had to sort of, are we going to go for the mortgage? Are we going to wait till the COF? Will we get the results from the COF? But luckily the call came through. And so in December, we found out that extra 50% was going to be covered. So, yeah, I've learned a lot of stuff against my will about various different points about owning something with the government, just backwards and forwards with... You think buying a house is bad, try buying like a building, a commercial building, absolute nightmare. But it happened and it was all good, so yeah.
Thank you. No, I appreciate your candidness and your honesty there, because I think too often you just hear about, this place raised X amount of thousands of pounds in community shares, and now they're running a community-owned distillery, and it's wholly renewable energy powered, and you think, that sounds great, but actually it's tricky. It is, and I think it pushes people really to their limits. They don't really understand what they've signed up to when they get on this journey. So it's really great to hear you speak so honestly about it. You also touched on there, and I want to just open that up to the rest of the panel, some of the support that you tapped into to actually make this happen. You mentioned that it's quite a stressful journey. You mentioned still being a bit confused about elements of the concept of community shares. So who is out there? Who was pivotal? Who couldn't you have done this without? You mentioned peer-to-peer support there with Matt, and that's really lovely to hear. So do you want to just open up a little bit about who helped you on the journey, and perhaps a little bit about where the gaps in that support are, if you feel there's something worth there talking about?
So we had support. Can I just go back to the last bit of your previous question where you said, would you do it again? Plug alert, we are doing it again. There's a community share offer that's live now on our website, and if you have £100 to spare and you like the idea of Signalise, please do support us. Right, back to the question. We had Dave Boyle from Community Shares, which was funded by Co-ops UK. We didn't get the booster fund, unfortunately, but that's worth applying for. But yes, it was mainly Co-ops UK, Dave Boyle. This time round, we've got the lovely Becky from 92 Minutes, if you want to wave, supporting us with the comms and the marketing strategy as well. And we've also got support this time round from the Reach Fund. That's probably it.
Yeah, pretty much the same answer, really. Reach Fund, Co-ops UK, and we did work with Dave Boyle at the Community Shares Company as well. And to answer that, the bit that I also didn't answer, would I do it again? It's constantly open at the moment, so I'm doing it all the time. And also for my sins, I did learn, I did train now how to be a Community Shares practitioner, so I am actually, I know a little bit more than these guys, maybe. A tiny bit.
So we had Reach Fund support, and Co-ops UK were brilliant, and Dave as well, and also Hilary Sudbury, who is the Cooperative Assistance Network, CAN. She was actually absolutely amazing, and she was always there at the end of the telephone when I was close to tears. So, yeah, I recommend Hilary if any of you are going to go down that road.
Yeah, one thing, sorry, I didn't say was we had the peer-to-peer support, and actually that is really important because I think, Dave is absolutely brilliant, but there's nothing like having people that you feel like were equally as clueless as you when they started, telling you that it's possible, and in our case, and also that everybody really makes the effort to take the time to, they come and invite us to their place and they sit down. You don't feel like you're sort of, that you're taking up their time. In our case, we saw the Comedia in Bath, the Bell in Bath, and Le Pub in Newport. All of them gave up a lot of time. And, in return, we've sort of done the same. And I feel like we had quite a long meeting at the start. And, I've done that with other people looking to do the same. Sister Midnight was one of them. And so, yeah, it's just good to sort of... there is that real kind of great network of peer-to-peer support. And I think everybody just buys into it. Even if they weren't sort of entirely bought into it at the start, it was just kind of like a business plan, but then actually you get more and more into it and you're just like, actually this just works, and I want to help other people sort of unlock the potential for their sort of businesses as well.
Yeah, that's really good to hear.
Also, sorry if I could just add, as a business that isn't buying an asset, we felt quite different, and still do, when you go through the community shares process, which feels like it's heavily weighted towards buying an asset of some description, whether that's a pub or a community venue. So what we've done is we just copy Equal Care Co-op, who've been absolutely amazing. So they did a crowdfunder, we did a crowdfunder. They did a first community share offer. We went, we'll just do what they're doing because they're absolutely brilliant. They did a second community share raise. We're now doing a second community care raise. So Emma's always been there for me to pick her brains as well.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right about it leaning towards asset base. So no, it's good to hear that you've got that peer-to-peer support. Okay, so moving on, and it has been touched on, but I just wanted to try and sort of unlock a little bit of a conversation about other funding, because in my experience sort of working in and around this space, you know, and I think it's probably typical across all business, funders, grants, sort of, you know, they're a little bit reluctant, aren't they, to jump in and invest and release cash willingly. But as soon as they see some initiative, as soon as they see some funds raised, you know, off your own back or the power of the community, they get a little bit more interest. It's a good way of unlocking buy-in and financial support from other areas. So could you perhaps talk a little bit about other funding that Community Shares has helped attract?
Yeah, I think for us it's a little bit different again because we weren't buying an asset. So we didn't get the boost fund, like I said again, which is a bit painful at the time. But we did get 30,000 from the People's Postcode Lottery, which was a partnership between them and FX, which was the fundraising platform that we used for the first community share offer. But we weren't looking at the time to raise any other grants for that particular share offer at the time.
So with Exchange, they had a match with Big Society Capital. I think they've changed their name now, and I can't exactly remember what it is, so apologies if anybody's here from there. But then, I think, yeah, in terms of, there was no matches on the music venue properties one, but in both cases, the share raise basically unlocked future funding. So with the Exchange, we were a CIC before we became a CBS, and we did about 8 funding applications that were all turned down. Then after the share offer, we managed to get funding from the Arts Council for a PA. We ended up with funding from WECA to do solar panels on top of the building. And actually, these were all the things that we were using the share offer money for. So actually, in the end, a lot of it didn't get spent, and now they're in quite a healthy kind of position with reserves and what have you. With the music venue properties one, it was almost a full circle thing, because it started off, it needed the power from the community. So when we opened the share offer, we made an initial couple 100,000. That brought some sort of big music industry bodies to the table, Sony and Amazon and the likes like that, who all put in sort of donations because it was too complicated for them to invest into. They decided that it would cost them more to pay the accountants to administer it than it would the interest that they could earn on it. So they just said, we'll just donate it. So that then in turn made the Arts Council see it seriously, and then they put in some money. That in turn allowed us to get the loan from the Arts and Culture Impact Fund. And then we were back to the community shares again, because our totalizer had gone up so much. Everybody was like, this is going to happen. Yeah, I want to be part of this. And I was telling you guys beforehand about how it was so crazy that the share offer finished at midnight, and I think in the last 10 minutes, so that there was about £15,000 worth of investment. Some people putting in like £2,000 at 11:57 on the day it was about to shut, and you're just like, who's up at this point thinking, yeah, I'll put in 2,000. I don't know if they'd all just got back from a gig and they'd had a few drinks maybe, and they were feeling like they wanted to be part of it. But yeah, I think it's such a momentum thing as well, and you know, one thing attracts the other. And I think it also, it's evidence for the grants, but it also helps you understand and articulate your mission and your finances a bit better, which are the sort of skills you need for grant funding. And I mean, knowing what I know now about grant funding, yeah, it would have been way easier if the Exchange could have just got a grant in the first place, but I just don't think it would have. Even if, like, I could go back with the knowledge I have now, I just don't think there would have been enough evidence to bring somebody else on board. All these grant funders quite often don't want to be the first person to give money because, but if they can see the community has got behind it, it's like, okay, well, we can justify doing that.
Yeah, we mostly got grants from Bristol organisations. Again, it was inviting them to the space, meeting the people that use the space, and yeah, it was pretty positive. So John James Foundation in Bristol, Nisbet Trust, and also Bristol City Council Community Development were really supportive as well, because we're the only community space within our particular ward. So, and we were really active under the previous owner during COVID with mutual aid networks and being a distribution point and stuff like that. So I guess if they lost that asset within Bishopsworth Ward, it would cost them a lot to actually replace it or put something else in space. So, yeah, they were really good, actually. So,
great, thank you. So I think we're going to try and just share a little bit, open up a little bit about your governance structures, just so people can understand how your organisations are structured, and talk a little bit about how the engagement in that governance is going. Are you managing to pay people back who have invested in your community share, and anything else that you want to share around that topic?
Yes, we have multi-stakeholder governance with 3 user types. So our deaf members, our interpreter members, the worker members, and then the investor members. So around 100, just over 100 each of deaf users and interpreter members, and around 200 investor members. The voting is any votes that are held, 45% weighted to users, 45 interpreters as the main members, and then 10% investors, and obviously 1 member, 1 vote. For paying back in the original investors from 2021, we're coming up to the 3-year mark now. And we're only just paying back interest, and that was partly because of the lovely cost of living crisis that happened, which really did affect the fees that were paid to interpreters. All of a sudden, the union fees went up, but we were stuck in contracts for 3 to 4 years. So we couldn't raise the contract fees straight away. We had to kind of apply, and it's still an ongoing battle to get the contract fees raised in line with inflation. So we're only just paying back interest to the investors now. We thinking about this on the train up today, I was thinking we probably should do a survey of our investors again. I think they're getting a bit sick of us because we didn't really engage with them very much for the first 2 years. And then in the last 6 months, because of the new share offer, we're just sort of bombarding them with newsletters and information. So we're trying to get a lot better and a bit more consistent around that engagement.
Yeah, I mean, the governance bit, I mean, I could answer the long way, and I think everybody would leave the room, or I could just sort of say that the easiest thing with MVP, Music Venue Properties, is to say that at the moment the governance structure almost gives Music Venue Trust all the control in it, but that's being changed following the last AGM. The whole point why that was set up was because they resourced and paid for all of the setup fees, and then they wanted to know that when it was set up, they could pass it back to the members. So that's happening at the moment. Both organisations are saying from that point of view that it has members. Any member can put themselves forward to become a director at AGMs, which are obviously held once a year. In terms of the repayment, Music Venue Properties hasn't got to the point where it would do any repayments yet, because that's the terms of the share offer. With the exchange, they have paid some interest, but I think it's generally capitalised, and they've opened up money, a pot where investors can request to have their investment returned. And in general, I think that pot hasn't been, it's still there essentially. Some has come out, but I think in general what I'm finding with both organisations, because we have done a survey, is that we've asked people how they'd see their investment, and over 50% on both surveys said, I don't care about the interest and I don't care about my initial investment. Essentially, I just saw it as a donation, in brackets. And then about 25% said, I don't care about the interest, but at some point I might like to have the money back. And then, only a small percent on both, probably less than 20% on both said that I actually see it as an investment. So I think it's more about just feeling part of something, and I think that actually the most important thing, and I think that Exchange and both organisations and probably most CBSs community benefit societies could sort of do this better, is it's almost like the payment is in the information, like just kind of keeping them appraised of what's happening, your members, and making them feel part of something. I think that's the currency rather than the interest itself. And, I think inevitably, because all of the boards of these organisations are people who are doing it for free, it's the thing that ends up kind of slipping through more than anything else. And I think everybody I don't think I've ever spoken to one organisation that said, Yeah, our member engagement is brilliant, and we're contacting them as much as we want to. I think everybody says, we really want to do better in this regard. So I think, I think that is a really important thing within these kind of organisations.
Yeah, I got back 4 things to remember, so I've got to make sure they don't fall out of my head. So we're a community benefit society. As I said before, we got quite a large shareholders live locally, so they're coming into the space quite regularly. So that's good. They feel engaged that way. But I want to echo what Matt said about we could do better on engaging those people on a more regular basis. It's quite hard to find the directors, so I think it needs to be a stronger messaging around the organisation can't actually survive without active directors, because it all starts from the board and then filters down. I think that's what happens when we were all novices. None of us have been involved in running community spaces. We're all just local residents who wanted to save something. So it's been a really steep learning curve, and to get people to buy into that is quite difficult and quite a big ask as well if you're all novices. So, I think that, it could be stronger, the communication could be better, but, the engagement is still there because people are still coming in to use the space.
I was just to pick up on the point of directors. I think that's been the Exchange's experience as well, that essentially it's ended up with the people who've been there the whole time. With the Exchange's governance structure, it has an interesting thing where 3 of the directors always have to be the senior managers. So those ones have changed, and the point of that being in there is that we just always wanted to make sure at the point where we created the rules that the staff's voice was being heard, as opposed to just it being 7 people a bit far removed from the business. In the case of music venue properties, I think it's probably the exception to the rule, because I guess it's such an interesting, unique, kind of groundbreaking project that has brought really, a directorship of people who are almost at the top of their game. In fact, one of the people who essentially created community shares is on the board. Somebody who worked at the Arts Council for 15 years now is on the board, and a property kind of developer who's manages millions of pounds worth of properties. And I suppose it's that thing, like, if you had to pay for those expertise, you'd be paying hundreds of thousands a year, but they've been sort of drawn in by the project. But I think, again, it's definitely the exception, because it's not like it's because it's a national project and it's interested and it's getting kind of that's what's brought people in there.
Okay, thank you. And what are your thoughts around, I know we touched on in our earlier conversations, sort of dispelling some of the myths around shared control can be a particular type of audience, isn't it, that understands and buys into that. What has your experience been around the financial element and getting people on board and understanding the shared control element of your organisations?
Yeah, I think we could definitely do a lot more co-op education. We recognise that's like the first step that almost needs to happen before you do anything else. And the more co-op education you do with the membership, the more they get it, the more they then engage. And it's a classic matter of staff capacity. When you're trying to run public sector contracts on low profit margins, you don't necessarily have a huge amount of capacity to do that, but it's definitely one of the things we need to get better at. The other thing with our members as well is, even though there's over 100 of each of the main types of members, Olive and I set up and attended a deaf user meeting, and then nobody came, and then and then only one person came from a local deaf organisation and said they're not here because they're happy. So it's that when people sometimes feel that they have a complaint to make, that's when they'll come, but if they're happy, they might not. So it's also recognising that we could sweat buckets in trying to engage with our members, but actually if they're happy with what we're doing and they don't feel like they have anything to say, maybe they just don't need to engage.
I think my experience in my job with Music Venue Trust, where my role there is kind of advising music venues about their kind of company structures, and with a view of generally trying to move them into not-for-profit organisations because we feel like that's more resilient. Most of the time it's CIC because you're trying to kind of educate people who only know about limited companies, and that's the kind of like the easiest way of getting them in. And then some of them will then become a charity, and some of them will become a co-op or a community benefit society. I found that like the thing that always comes up there is that actually what people worry about is, yeah, but what happens if like there's a coup, essentially? That's what they're always worried about. I've ran this business for 10 years, and, you know, if I bring in my community, am I going to then be thrown out at the first day AGM or whatever? And I think that the experience of everywhere is actually trying to get the members to put themselves forward is really difficult. And I think, you know, the thing about it, yeah, you know, we've got these, you know, really great share offer documents and business plans that go alongside it all. But I suppose ultimately a lot of people just aren't reading it, you know, and a lot of people are just feeling like, well, they literally say, well, I donated, you know, like that. They think that they've made a donation. They don't really kind of understand. And, you know, sometimes the other thing is maybe they do understand, but actually for them, the investment is enough. Like they don't want the ongoing sort of, you know, input into running it or to become a director because, you know, like they've done what their bit, which was to put some money in to hit that target to be able to allow the business to keep going. So, yeah, it is difficult. I feel like I would definitely echo your points about the co-op education would be great. But, yeah, without knowing everybody's intentions and why they did it, that it's quite hard to know where to start sometimes.
And what do you think can be done around sort of clarifying that and improving understanding of people's investment type and intentions around it?
I'm not really sure. I think it is probably just that member engagement piece again. And the problem is, I suppose, is that ultimately the thing that we all have in common is that we have little to no profit margin within our industries. And the reason we've all come to this, and probably the reason that most people come to the community shares, is because they need, you know, they need that extra boost of money that they can't find elsewhere. And we're ultimately all under-resourced. So like the first thing that goes out of the window is that member engagement piece, unfortunately, because it's more important that, in the case of the exchange, that somebody puts in the time to advancing the show that's happening on Saturday to make sure it goes smooth and that there's, you know, the chance to make the money, or, you know, and I guess that's the thing. I don't really know how that kind of opens up. I guess it comes down to resource, doesn't it? And, you know, imagining where that resource comes from is actually quite difficult. It's quite a big piece.
Yeah, I echo the capacity thing. Sometimes you get so caught up in the day-to-day that actually all the other stuff that goes with it can like fall by the wayside, especially when it's such a small team. There's only two of us that have to run everything. And yeah, so sometimes we could be covering the cafe instead of working out our 3-year strategic plan. Yeah, it's just one of those things, trying to engage with people and keep everything as it should be in an ideal world isn't possible for us at the moment. I think that because of the cost of living, I don't know if you've seen like the average spend for a customer is reduced, so our revenue streams become smaller, margins become tighter. There's more competition for grants as well within an area, depending on the type of grant. So, yeah, it's tough to keep on top of everything.
I just wanted to say something about the idea of decentralising as well. We've thought a lot on and off, but I wish we had grant funding to do this. So if the powers that be could listen and just give us some cash to do a specific project around community tools and decentralising. So we've sort of flitted between let's do a DAO, so a decentralised autonomous organisation piece, or, you know, around blockchain, and then people go, what are you talking about? But the idea of community tools where things grow organically, so the idea that you educate a few people and engage with a few people, but then give them the tools to carry on doing that themselves. So we're very much reliant on, oh, here's a Zoom link, invite everyone, do a poll. It just goes on, and it's endless, and it takes far too long. So we're trying to really think about how we can do something incredibly quickly that allows the community itself to organically start to organise.
I was just going to make a point, like when I was making the point about co-op education and things like that. I wouldn't want people to think that that's not out there, because Co-ops UK do have some really great programs and they're always really cheap to get on. I think it is just more of a resource within the organisations itself to even find the person to send to those courses, because it's like, well, I could go and spend 2 days doing that, or, I could unblock the toilets, I don't know, something like that, which is generally what... I've learned a lot about unblocking toilets. I always go to that one because I've learned a lot about that in running a music venue. I didn't think I would need that skill, but I'm really good at it now.
Important life skill. Okay, any plans to do further fundraising? I know you've mentioned yours, Jen. Feel free to open up on that if you wish. But you guys?
Not at the moment, because sometimes it can seem like just getting through the summer would be really good. I'm just thinking about my holiday at the moment. But and also, I don't want to come across, I feel like I might have been quite negative about community shares in the process. It is brilliant, and we saved our venue when we're still going 2.5 years later. And the stories that you get, the people that you meet, the people that are coming into the space every day, it does give you a lovely warm feeling inside and thinking, actually, I'm doing something really positive. My daughter likes to call me a pillock of the community now. So, yeah, it is a good thing, and I don't want to put anyone off if it came across negative. But yes, we don't know about fundraising yet.
So in the case of the exchange, I'm no longer on the board, which I see as a measure of success, really, of that. So I couldn't really comment on them. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, the Music Venue Properties share offer, it remains open, but what our strategic plan so the original share offer was about raising an amount of money to buy a number of venues that we'd already identified, but our plan is to continue buying new venues as they become available, or as situations emerge. There's interesting situations that has emerged at the moment where the landlord, in inverted commas, turned out that he'd gone bankrupt and hadn't told the Crown that he owned the building that he had then rented out to this venue. So we're now trying to buy that one. But I digress. So what we're going to do is, when we're buying venues that weren't a part of our original share offer document, run separate ones alongside it that feed into the main ones, similar to kind of how the energy companies do it sometimes. So yeah, I think our strategic plan is to continue to do it, but rather than focus, there'll be one ongoing that's going all the time that focus on the community of interests, is what I would call it. The people who like live music, people who want to go to live music venues and don't care that they live in London, they want to save the venue in Liverpool or whatever. And then we'll do sort of localised ones when specific venues come up in different cities.
Another plug, Jen?
Another plug. Plug alert. So, I mean, I think I touched on it before, but the wonderful thing about doing a community share offer is it's like a massive marketing campaign for your idea that can really attract people and showcase what you're doing outside of the normal day-to-day. So although it's like a big undertaking and you have to take this massive deep breath and go, right, let's just go for it, it's an opportunity for us outside of the Northwest to go, hey, this has been happening for 3 years and look at what we're doing. And this is what you call success. This is part of the new economy. Let's spread this around the country, or let's do it bigger and better. And that without doing a community share offer, you kind of don't almost get the time to do that because you're busy unblocking toilets. I don't unblock toilets, but I do other ridiculous things that I shouldn't be doing. So yeah, it's just an opportunity to stop from the day-to-day and shout out about the good stuff.
Great. Okay, just last wee thing before we move on to questions. If you had to choose a couple of things to say to the audience today, or to anybody who's considering doing a community share offer, what would they be? Could be 2 good things, could be 2 bad things, could be a good and a bad thing. What would they be? Prepare.
We haven't prepared for this second offer at all due to the slight capacity issues that we have, and feeling very underprepared, but that's absolutely the number one thing. Same when you do a crowdfunder. I think they say have 3 weeks or 6 weeks beforehand to prepare, 6 weeks to do the crowdfunder, 6 weeks afterwards to engage with your investors. So you can imagine if you're doing a community share offer, you might need a lot longer. Brace yourself and get lots of support around you. Talk to your peers. They're great. And me, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say peer-to-peer support, but that feels like I just stole your last sentence then, doesn't it? But I'm going to stick with that one because I felt like that was integral for us, to be able to see these working examples of people who've done it and to be able to sort of, to kind of learn from their experiences, really. I'm not really sure what I would say as a second one. Come back to me. I could only come up with peer-to-peer in that time.
No worries, we'll come back. Emma?
I think the engagement with your local community is essential, and they will always surprise you. The second one is read the small print on whatever platform that you're using about their fees and how much they're going to charge you, because otherwise it becomes a bit of a shock when the bill actually comes in.
Good advice.
Okay, I've come up with the second one now. Resource, I think. I think the thing is that there's all this funding out there that will pay for the practitioners to support you, or pay for a marketing campaign. But it doesn't. There's not very much funding out there to cover your time, and it ends up sort of really taking you out of running your business day to day. So you really need to be able to prepare yourself. How is the business going to keep running whilst you have to throw yourself headfirst into this process, which probably at best is a 6-month process. But if you're going to prepare, it's probably more like a year process. So resource.
Also, platform-wise, I said that I feel like I'm just giving plugs endlessly today. So Air Register is a very good tool. Simon Borkin is around somewhere. I'm not sure if he's in the room. But we decided to use ethics for 2 reasons. They had something like 15,000 willing investors on their database, so it was a quick way to reach 15,000 people that we wouldn't otherwise reach. And secondly, the administration around shares, interest payments, and all the rest of it. So Air Register actually sort of takes that pain away. Look at the platform. Be careful of the fees. Think about the admin afterwards.
And a second thumbs up for Air Register. We use that as well.
Brilliant.
I feel sad now.
I'll share you the link.
Okay. Well, listen, thank you. Can we get a round of applause for our fabulous panel? Thank you so much for joining us on stage, for telling us about your journeys, for being so open, so candid, and just being total pros. It's been a pleasure. So we'll open up to the floor. We'll take some questions. I think I'm a big believer in taking ownership, out of sessions and making sure you get what you want out of them. So, hands up, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Fascinating. Particularly a question, it's Jen, I think, isn't it? Yeah. Just because I'm involved in a community benefit society that's more like yours, there isn't an asset there. And it's quite difficult to see what the community would be that might have an interest. You said a little bit about how you originally promoted the community share offer. You probably won't be able to answer this, but have you got any idea of the profile of people who invested and what their interest was in investing? What was the reason? Because it's with yours, it's pretty obvious. They wanted to keep their local community centre open. With yours, it's a bit more obvious. People like me who love going to local music venues who would want to invest. With yours, to me, it's a little less clear. But just also very quickly, I'm also involved in another community benefit society in my local area, which took over a wonderful hardware shop. And I'm an investor. And tomorrow evening is its first AGM. And I realised that I'd only been to the shop once since I invested. And it's sort of a comment on what you were saying. It's because it's all going well. And I love the fact that it's there and it's an asset for the community. And I know I will need it in the future. But I'm hardly engaged in it. But I was very happy to invest in it. And I get their email updates, read it, it's all going well. I know people who use the thing. So I'm not going to particularly engage, but I'm still very happy. It's I think that's the comment you were making about engaging with your investors. It's quite difficult if they're quite happy with what's going on. But yes, the question, please.
I guess for us, you don't know why people invest, but necessarily, unless it's a really clear idea, but I think there was probably about 4 or 5 themes. So tech for good was one of them, like building something that was going to be owned by the community and not a large private company where the community didn't have any say in how that technology was used. And then we suspect that perhaps a handful of people might have had deaf people in their family or friends. And then also we did have a clear community in terms of the deaf users and the interpreting community as well. And then probably a lot of investors, we didn't. It's just something must have struck a chord with them. We don't know what that was really, but being an ethical business, part of the new economy, those kind of strands would have all helped. I think Olive's has asked me to voice over just because I know her so well, so I'll do it from the stage and she's going to sign. She said hi everybody. So my name's Olive and I'm deaf. I work with Jen at Signalise and my role is a membership and outreach worker. I'm very glad that you've talked about the difficulties of community shares. And in my role, actually, I'm part of educating, doing the co-op education with deaf users and how they can be involved in Signalise. So I know that you mentioned community engagement, resources, and education. And the resources are actually really, really important. So it's about how we create those to get the deaf users to really understand and what Signalise is and how to be a part of it. Because it's not just interpreter members, it's the deaf users as well. And we're the only ones we think, globally that are doing it. But it's about deaf users having that engagement and the empowerment to talk about their concerns. And that can actually has the possibility to create a new world for deaf users in terms of their involvement and empowerment. So when we were talking about resources, I'd love to think about more about how we can create those resources, especially for deaf and disabled people, to get them more involved. So I think that is a real need. At the moment, it's even hard for me to find those resources that are out there. So to create some more of those would be fantastic. I guess that's not really a question, it's more of a statement, but...
It's a wrap. Sorry, I've taken it to the wire. But do please feel free to approach any of the panellists and myself over the course of the day and, continue the conversation. I'm conscious there was a couple of other hands up. We'll try and answer questions through the day. Thanks so much, Kelly.
Thank you. So if we can just have a big round of applause for the panel.